Hi guys, Jackie from Famished Farm, and we're out in the garden today in the yard trying to winterize everything. So I'm going to start off in this is the where the strawberries were that we've relocated. We're going to just clean this up in anticipation of being able to till this coming up sometime. We're not sure when, but so I'm just basically removing all of the hardware. I had some shepherd's hooks in the middle with a birdhouse hanging on it. And now I'm going to move down to the other end and just try to get all of these planting areas put to bed for the winter. So we have pulled the big pile that you see in front of us that is between the camera and where I'm at is one of the piles of the tomatoes that we pulled up. That includes the San Marzanos that were to the right along the fence, and then where those wood uprights are sticking, that was the rest of the tomatoes, the cherry tomatoes, and then on the bales right in the middle would have been where the Roma tomatoes were. So we're just going to clean this area up, and unfortunately I don't have enough room in my garbage can to put all of these tomato plants. So I'm going to leave those for another day, but they're just kind of in piles now, ready to go out with the garbage when we have an empty container. What I'm doing now is I'm trying to pick up as many of those cherry tomatoes that are left as possible, because last year I had so many volunteer plants. It seemed like when I planted carrots that there were more tomatoes coming up than carrots. So I'm trying to be a lot better with cleaning up the area, and also I'm not composting any tomato products this year. They're all going into the garbage. Other than if it's just skins, then I'll go ahead and compost those. So I'm going to speed up a little bit and let's see what we get done today. This project is going to take us 2 days to get done. Today it's, as you can see, sunny and it's low 50s, and we're lucky to have another day like that scheduled for tomorrow. I've moved on now. I'm pulling up the landscape stakes that are holding my soaker hose in place, and then I'm just going to move those all to the side in one of the flower pots. There you see me emptying the tomatoes. The soaker hose I'll actually pull up a little later. I'm just trying to get all those staples up. What I just did is I'm taking apart the planters that I had at the front of each of these raised beds, and I had each of those little black planters sitting on a little rubber landscape tile. Move that out of the way. Now I'm starting to take away the supports for the raised bed. I use blocks from Home Depot made for raised gardens. I really like them. They're held in place with a piece of rebar, and you can apparently put those blocks up to 6 high, which is, they're each about 6 inches high, so that would be 3 feet if you wanted to use them for something other than raised beds. Rod is going to poke in here at some point and give me a hand getting this wood and all of this kind of put to bed, and we're just going to store it, overwinter it in the corner of the yard, not within the raised bed, so when we do bring the rototiller through, everything will be out of the way. The wood that you saw me kind of stack up against the fence is just going to live there temporarily until we get that tilled, and then I'll probably stack that somewhere, not sure where. This is one of my business hand carts or dollies, and guys, we use this a lot just to move things around the yard, things that maybe it's more convenient to put them on because you don't have to maybe lift them into a wheelbarrow or a wagon or something like that. So we make good use of our hand cart. Here I am undoing the concrete ladders that we had trellised up against the fence, And I'm going to do something different next year. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to use these for. They will be trellises and supports of some kind. Over winter, I'm going to use a couple of them to put some freeze cloth over my citrus trees. If you've been around, you may remember that I bought these at the beginning of the season. I think I bought 15 or 18 of them. I can't remember. They're about $5 each, $5 or $6 each at Home Depot. And I just can more easily transport these than I could a cattle panel. And cattle panels were still pretty pricey, and I just didn't have a trailer or anything that I felt like transporting 16-foot long cattle panels with. So this worked out really well, and thankful that I had them this year, even though my trellising could have gone better, but always room for improvement. So now Rod has finished whatever project he was working on, and he's going to give me a hand with this concrete bird bath. It's very heavy. I'm going to move it over to the corner. I am going to end up just rolling the top over there, and then we'll use the hand cart to pick up the pedestal of this bird bath. This is one of those age-related gardening concessions. When I was younger, this thing I could pick it up and move it wherever I wanted to, and did many times on my own. And now this is a two-person project for Rod and I. Aging, it's just a fact of life. You just figure out a way to work around it. And in our case, we put the dolly upright, and then I'm just going to flip the concrete base onto the end of the dolly, and Rod will move that over for me. Now I'm going to try to gather up all these concrete ladders into one pile. They're very light. Once I get them stacked up, I'm going to move those. I'm going to overwinter them over by the compost pile, kind of along the back property line, and just to kind of get them out of the way. They are just a little bit fragile. I noticed a couple of the cross pieces on the ends broke off, or one of the welds came undone. So I don't want people to step on them to break them any further than they are already. And now Rod is off getting the drill. We're just going to finish kind of these raised beds here, so I'm going to speed through that. We used 2x6 and 2x4s, actually, just what I had on hand to make these raised beds. And this next year, I'm going to make them a little wider and a little longer. So I will be buying some new 2x6s to make those a little, just a little bigger and better, I think, this coming year. Rod is back with the drill. He's going to help me get this support down. And then we're also going to save that just in case I want to reuse parts of it for next year. I'm stacking up these concrete raised bed pieces and some of the smaller 2x6 pieces that were the cross supports for the beds, and I'm going to move those over to the side yard. And then you'll see us at one point, we're taking out the rebar supports, and sometimes those are kind of hard to get out. You have to kind of bend them and poke them and prod them to get them to come out of the ground. But I'm going to go also a little higher on my beds next year, so I'm only going to have 2 beds instead of the 3 beds. And hopefully that will make possibly growing carrots a little easier. I have not had much luck with carrots, and some of the things that require just a longer, a better, deeper growing medium. And then here's one of these, just the planters. These are just 12-inch planters, and they're sitting on those black rubber tiles that I'll move out of the way. Now I'm going to move on to kind of wrapping up this soaker hose. And what this one is just the round, I think it's 5/8 inch round kind of rubber type soaker hose. And those guys, I don't even bother to have Rod blow those out. What do you think? Am I shortening the life of those? I figure the water just sweeps out of them, so no sense in doing that. Now I'm going to pull up this, I think this is a 16-inch concrete deck patio stone that the bird bath was sitting on, and I'll also move that back over to the side, just kind of out of the way. And then I'm just going to kind of stand here a minute and survey what's left. And I decide to go ahead and pick up, these are 4x4s and 2x4s that kind of delineate the sides of the bed. And some of these were in there in the ground already when we moved in, and some of them we added from some scrap wood that we had. So we're going to reuse those next year, at kind of just where they came out of, but the bed will be extended like twice as far down the property a bit, just so we have some more room. This is some cardboard that I had under the trellis, and I've got enough room, I think, in that garbage can, so I'm just going to pick up the parts that are kind of blowing around or that might blow around, because this is all shortly before we leave for our Thanksgiving trip. So I just want to make sure that none of that's going to blow around while we're gone. So that kind of wraps up what I'm going to do in the garden today. I am going to just grab a few more of the little cherry tomatoes that are lingering to try to get as many of those out as possible. And I'm just kind of contemplating what we've got to do as far as the tilling goes, or in a couple weeks, when I think I can probably get that done before Christmas. And it does lead to another project, which there's a real brown spot in the yard that you can see just to to the left of the screen. And it has been, that's where the previous owners swimming pool was. They had an above ground pool. Seems like it was maybe about an 18-inch diameter. And we discovered this year, we always knew they had put sand down, but they also put landscape fabric under the sand. And if you're not from an area that has clay, you may know that clay and sand don't really mix well. So my plan is to scoop up that sand and put it in some 5-gallon buckets, and then use that for growing. I was thinking about trying the peanuts again, and maybe just growing those in 5-gallon buckets. Just saving that sand for something that we may need in the future. My friend Arlene, that gave us the rototiller, recommended setting the depth on the tiller pretty shallow, and just going over that entire circle and kind of breaking up the Bermuda grass that's grown over the landscape fabric and into the sand. Just breaking that up would be probably easier, and then we can shovel off that sand and then pull up the landscape fabric. That's the plan. We'll see what happens. Now we are going to move on to beginning to winterize the rain barrels. We had a huge rainfall just a week or so before this, and so all 4 rain barrels are full, and they're 55-gallon rain barrels. You know what? They might even be 65. They're, good size rain barrels. So my plan is I've hooked a hose and then a couple of my soaker hoses, and I've run it out to the front yard. And I'm going to give these big sugar maples, white maples out here, and my pecan tree a good drink. I think we'll enjoy that before winter sets in. But what I didn't realize, it's going to take several hours to empty all those rain barrels. So my plan was to get that done on the same day, but alas, that is not going to happen. So what I'm doing here is just walking the hose line, and mainly the soaker hose part of the line, to make sure that there's no kinks in it so that the water is going to come out all the way to the end. I've also saved out a couple of my watering cans, and I'm going to just probably make about 10 trips to the front yard and water in pretty good some of the plants that I moved out there, transplanted there, or moved from my front containers into the actual garden bed, the planting beds by the front door. And then I'm going to get up here and take off the rain barrel diverter and get that ready for winter. And I'm also pulling off, I've got some, I think it's 1.5 inch plumbing PVC pipe that runs into each of these rain barrels. And so that's going to get pulled off. I'm going to leave it in one piece and just put it in our utility room over winter. And we'll see how that does. It all can be pulled apart, but I just found that it was kind of a pain at the beginning in the spring of this year to get that put back together when it was all pulled apart. Now I've got another hose out that I'm going to run some water on our junipers and where my daylilies are along the driveway. That's alongside one of the fences, and we're just going to get as many of these rain barrels emptied as we can. And I think at this point I've got 2 of the rain barrels emptied, so I'm just working on these last 2. And Rod's plan is tomorrow to blow those hoses out, so I hope to get these emptied tonight. Now, today's plan, we had windstorm that has resulted in several new piles of little tree limbs that have come down. So my plan early on, before I started taping, was to walk all of the trees and get all of that into one place, while Rod begins to rake up all of the leaves out front. Now, all of our leaves are not down, so we're just going to get a head start and get all of them up to this point. And this is November 22nd, so we're still before Thanksgiving. And then when we come back, we can do some more, and several more times if we need to. I am making leaf mold out of all of our leaves, so I'm happy to have a place to put those. Today's chipping is, and this is my little Harbor Freight chipper shredder. It's 1.5 inches. I got 4 of those big tote bags full of mulch for my front planters. Here we are probably after lunch now. Rod has started picking up the leaves with our leaf rake, and unfortunately I don't think realized I had pulled the extension cord over to this area, and when he pulls off this bin of leaves, oh my gosh, we have the cord is into the tines of this leaf rake. So guess what we spend the next 15 minutes doing. Now, this was totally my fault. I didn't realize that this rake would pick up this cord. Apparently there's a setting, this is set pretty low, so it swept up the cord too. And luckily the cord wasn't damaged, but I'm sure it's not real good for it to be wound tightly around this beater bar, if you will. So bear with us while we undo this cord. Now, Rod has already made one round with the leaf rake. So this is 2 bins of leaves that I'm going to be shredding. And we bought last year a Sunjo leaf mulcher. And this will be my second time using it. And we have taken a break, and now Rod has decided it's going to be so many hours before he's done. So I've gotten out there and I've raked around each of our trees, and there's 4 of them that we need to, actually there's 6 trees that we need to rake around, so then he can just much easier just run the mower with the leaf rake and get all of the leaves up. So I have taken a break from pulling out the shredder to do this project for him. Now, guys, this is actually the second time this season I'm using this shredder. I used it just not too long ago to do some more leaves. We did just buy it last year, though, so we had used it once prior to using it this couple of times this season. This thing was, I researched it pretty well because I've known that I'm always going to save my leaves, and I just didn't know how to accomplish mulching them. So for the first year, I did the leaf mulcher that you use your string trimmer to do it, and it worked, but it was a lot of extra work and not my preferred way to do it. So this thing went on sale. I can't remember. I'm sure we bought it at Home Depot, either Home Depot or Amazon, I'm not sure. It's really good quality. It lets you pick from a fine chop to a coarse chop, and I kind of have it set somewhere in the middle. I've tried, I like either of them. I think for gardening purposes, either works fine. I just don't know if it's, I'd like to get another season, get through this season before I do a review of it. So maybe next year I'll do a review of this Sunjoe. It works on stringer trim, like I think they're 12-inch long pieces that it comes with, and I generally each day replace the strings. You probably could do more often than that. I'm kind of cheap though, so I let them go as long as possible. This is how it works. I'm using my little leaf rake hand things that my friend Darlene got for me. When she heard I didn't have any, she knew I needed some, and boy was she right. Those are fantastic for this job. Now, one of the things I can say about the mulcher, if you run branches through it, that will use your string trim line quicker than if you don't. So you'll see me every once in a while, I'm kind of picking out pieces of branches and I'm throwing them into a pile. So I'm trying to do as little of that as possible. It's inevitable though that some of these little branches get in there. Not a big deal. So we've kind of changed the way that we're pulling the leaf bin over to the pile. Rod's handling that, as you can see, while I continue mulching. After about an hour and a half, I've finished the pile of leaves for today, and the little bin that you see with the shade cloth around it is my leaf mold area. So I'm just trying to clean as much of that into that area as possible, and I do go through and rake the whole area nice so everything is as clean as possible, and then get this thing put away for the day. You can see Rod is pulling in the mower too. Late in the day, we've got the rain barrels tipped over and emptied, and there's just one of these screens that's really, and it's really dirty. It's the first barrel that comes off the rain barrel diverter from the downspout. So I am going to remove that one and give it a good clean. It's just full of kind of black, silty looking stuff. So we'll get that cleaned up here in a minute. But the rain barrels, the way I store them is I just tip them over upside down. I make sure that the downs, or the little spigots, they're plastic. So I make sure they're not up against the brick wall. So if they do, shake in the wind or anything, they're not going to be broken or anything. And then I have a tie-down strap that I'll ratchet into place, and that just keeps them from blowing around. It works out pretty good. These rain barrels I got from our county extension agent up in Illinois. They're really nicely made. I've enjoyed having them. We've had them for about 6 years now. And they just are held in place. These little screen filters are held in place by 4 screws, and they are galvanized screws. And these particular ones, one of them had gotten kind of rusty. I did shoot it with some silicone spray to hopefully keep it in good shape for next year. But I take them apart, then I take the screen inside, and fortunately Rod's already got the outside spigot covered, and get that cleaned off. You could probably just wipe it with a paper towel too. It'd probably be just fine. And then put those 4 screens back on. The only hard part of it was lining up the mesh screen so you didn't create new holes in it, which probably is not a deal breaker, but I just tried to get it to line up perfectly. And then we'll finish putting up the last rain barrel and getting them tied down. Note to self, pull the tables out next year from the house and sweep behind them. But this pretty much finishes our winterizing. Rod blows those hoses out later, and we're ready for some freezing temperatures. Guys, thanks for being here. We hope you've enjoyed our work day. Come back and see us next time, and we'll maybe get to some rototilling in the garden. Bye.